I don't know why I'm doing this, but I think I look really cool doing it. Okay, I'm done. What is up, everybody? Random Random Man here, bringing you my review for the film adaptation of The Hunger Games, Mockingjay, Part 1, which stars Jennifer Lawrence, Josh Hutcherson, Liam Hemsworth, Woody Harrelson, Elizabeth Banks, Julianne Moore, Philip Seymour Hoffman, Jeffrey Wright, Stanley Tucci, and Donald Sutherland. What a humongous cast, and is directed by Francis Lawrence, no relation to Jennifer. Now the plot, which of course is based off of the novel the same name and is written by Suzanne Collins, follows Katniss Everdeen, played by Jennifer Lawrence, who, after destroying the last Hunger Games and her home of District 12 is destroyed, she escapes to District 13, where she meets President Coin, played by Julianne Moore, who convinces her to be the symbol of a new rebellion that is arising in Pan Am, all while Katniss is trying to save her beloved Peeta Mellark, played by Josh Hutcherson, who is being held hostage by the Capitol. Now, I am a fan of the Hunger Games book trilogy. I have thoroughly enjoyed every single installment in that franchise, as well as the film adaptations that have followed, with the original Hunger Games movie being a very good one in my opinion. Even with it laced in shaky cam and all that weird stuff, I still really dug it. And Catching Fire was definitely a welcome improvement over the original, not just on the action front, but in the narrative aspect as well. So naturally, with the inevitable outcome of Mockingjay being adapted into a movie, I got really excited, especially since I am in the very small minority that considers Mockingjay their favorite installment in the series. There was one huge catch though. This is following the dangerous trend that Hollywood has set up by splitting up the final book in a franchise into two parts, and that got me really worried at first. Now, obviously, book franchises have done this in the past with their film adaptations. Harry Potter used this to its greatest advantage with the Deathly Hallows, as it was pretty much necessary for that franchise to do so to tell a better story. On the other hand, however, Twilight was just around with Breaking Dawn. And now we have The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 1, which leaves one question. Was it all worth it? Let's run down the whole thing. As I mentioned in the intro, this is a humongous cast that has been implemented here. Leading the pack is, of course, the wonderful Jennifer Lawrence, as not only has she done a great job in the past as Katniss, but this is no exception here. She is just lovely in the role, as she brings the emotional core towards the series down with her character, but also can be kick-ass with a bow and arrow once she can get put into the action. And not only is she going to be synonymous in this role from now on, even with all the other movie roles that she will get in the future, I think this is her signature role right here. And on a quick side note, just like Keira Knightley proved in Begin Again that she can sing, this movie right here definitely reinforces the statement that Jennifer Lawrence can sing, and she is just flat out talented. Josh Hutcherson as Peeta Mellark also does a fantastic job here. He's in and out of the movie for the most part, but then again, once he does pop up on screen in TV interviews that are put into play with Stanley Tucci's character of Caesar Flickerman, who also does a fine job, he definitely sells what his character is supposed to do in this movie, as he is captured by the Capitol and is supposed to say what he's supposed to say on screen. And especially towards the end of the movie where his character gets a bigger role, I think that this is a great performance. Liam Hemsworth also does an admirable job here as Gale Hawthorne. I wasn't really a big fan of his character in the other movies, nor did I feel any different in the books, as his character isn't really given much to do, and that's more of the flaw in the writing. But then again, he is given a lot more to do here, and that's why I definitely feel that there is a purpose to his character now. Those three performances, however, are just some of the glorious acting that is implemented in this movie. Woody Harrelson does a very good job as Hamish Abernathy once again in some scenes. Elizabeth Banks also does a very colorful job as Effie Trinket, even with all the color that is sucked out of her character. Julianne Moore is a valiant new addition as President Coin. Philip Seymour Hoffman as Plutarch Heavensbee still saddens me to know that he is no longer with us in real life, but he still delivers such a grounded performance from one of my favorite actors of all time. Jeffrey Wright as BT also does a fine job in some of the small scenes he's in. I already mentioned Caesar Flickerman, as he is played well by Stanley Tucci, but Donald Sutherland. Now, he gets a special mention from me as he plays such a menacing villain that he doesn't need to overplay his acting so much as he is such a respected actor, and he can just be so intimidating just by looking at you and just from talking in every conversation that he has with any character. As when he does make a huge decision at the end of this movie, I was just like, ooh, you evil looking Santa Claus, I just love to hate you so much. But the bottom line here, there are just so many characters to talk about, and the enormous cast and the excellent acting that comes from them are Mockingjay Part 1's greatest asset. Like I said before, I was concerned that Mockingjay was being split into two movies, more so because of the one issue that is put into play. Mockingjay is roughly around the same length as the original Hunger Games and Catching Fire books, at around 300 to 400 pages to my knowledge. And to that, I think that the narrative would have been pushed so far in trying to squeeze out as much of the story as they possibly could. But, like I said before, was it all worth it? For now, only time will tell, as I have to see part 2 in order to figure out if both parts are well connected towards one another. But for the most part, as the buildup is set up here, I think it's very well realized here, especially as all the main events are being pushed on towards the beginning of the novel. And I think that this is a very solid adaptation of that section of the story. This also leads into what many people consider the biggest problem with this movie, in that it is quote-unquote boring because there are more talking scenes and less action scenes. I didn't find that to be the case, however. I actually think all the political intrigue that goes into the propaganda and how war is handled behind the scenes was very interesting, as Katniss is thrown into the mix of all this, as there are no more Hunger Games here. No, this is full-on war. It's the Capitol versus District 13, and District 13 is trying their hardest to unite all of the other districts on their side. And just the use of propaganda with PETA being used as a puppet from the Capitol and Katniss being used as the symbol for District 13 was really cool to see how both of them were playing off of each other in how war is going to be showcased once the second part does come up. But how was the action that was in the movie? Well, the action that is put into play here is also very entertaining. There are only two big action scenes that are placed here, and they are both rescue missions of sorts. One of them having to take place in District 8 and the other one being employed in the Capitol. And it was just a breath of fresh air to see tactical warfare being placed upon the audience as opposed to kids killing kids in the previous two movies. And that is partially why Mockingjay is my favorite book in the series. This is not to say that I didn't have any problems with this movie, as what film doesn't have any issues? For one thing, I thought there was too much exposition spewed out in the beginning of this film. As any fan of the series who walks into these movies knows who these characters are and what the plot is about. And I don't think that there should have been that much time dedicated towards the beginning of the movie to explain who these characters are once again and what the plot is going to be about. And that essentially could have made the movie shorter if those parts were cut out. Also, I think there were some moments that were trying to be too on the nose for Heartbreak, especially since this is all set up for the next movie. But I think that it probably would have been a lot better if it was more so saved for part 2, just like the final installment of Harry Potter. But then again, there were not a lot of these moments that were implemented here, and they didn't bother me too much. But other than these parts, I think that this movie is thoroughly entertaining when you're in the right mindset, in that this is all going to be a huge lead up to part 2, and it's going to be such an explosive finale. And I think that it makes it more of an appreciative film in my regard, as I think that it will not be as highly seen as a standalone film in this Hunger Games franchise. But for my 2 cents, I thoroughly enjoyed it. My final thoughts on this movie are that even though there were some sparing moments in between the film that could have been handled better in my opinion, I think that this is a solid entry in the Hunger Games film franchise and is also a good adaptation of what is offered in the book so far for audiences willing to watch it. The excellent acting all around from every cast member involved is just a wonder to watch on screen. The political intrigue and how the plot was written with war and propaganda are very well executed in that regard. And I just think that in terms of how this is a departure from the rest of the Hunger Games franchise, from kids killing kids to total warfare, makes this a special kind of movie in that franchise, in that this is a very hard thing to do, to switch from one part to another, especially since this is all build up to the next one. Yes, if you do expect all action to be showcased like in the previews for this movie, you will be disappointed. But if you're willing to show how much of an actor's medium film can be, with great performances like that are showcased here and impeccable writing, I think a fan of the Hunger Games franchise and just a regular moviegoer will be pleased with this entry. I definitely recommend this movie. My final verdict for the Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 1 is 4 out of 5 stars. Thank you all, as always, for watching. Be sure to like this video, comment on what you thought of The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 1, subscribe to my channel for more, and I'll catch you on the next movie review.